Every perfect pizza crust, every silky sheet of pasta, every loaf of focaccia with that open, airy crumb. We're taught to credit the flour, or maybe the baker's hands, passed down through generations. But what if the real author of that perfect Roman bite wasn't a chef at all, but a Roman engineer who lived 2,000 years ago? Today, we're tracing Rome's culinary arc by diving into some fascinating source material. We're going to take a mouth-watering journey from the ash-covered ruins of Pompeii straight up to today's bustling street markets to uncover the living history behind the world's most famous carbohydrates. So, to really understand Roman food, we've got to travel back nearly 2 millennia. Picture this. The year is 79 AD, and Mount Vesuvius erupts. It's a terrifying, dramatic event that buried entire cities. But that hot ash and gas, it actually acted as the sudden, absolutely perfect time capsule. It completely carbonized a local baker's daily bread, freezing an ancient recipe in place for 1,800 years. I mean, talk about a long bake time. And Romans took this bread incredibly seriously. Look at this quote from the philosopher Pliny the Elder. It's essentially a 2,000-year-old flour review. He extensively documented Rome's absolute obsession with artisan grain, painstakingly ranking different wheats by weight, color, and flavor. For the Romans, chasing the perfect crumb wasn't just a hobby, it was a tradition written right into their DNA.
Which brings us to part 1, the ancient bread of Pompeii, the panis quadratus.
This is that famous ancient loaf preserved in the ashes, and recreating it today, it literally brings history back to life. The process is fascinating. You start by pouring salt water into a font, basically a ring of flour mixed with sourdough starter or biga, and then you knead it for a solid 15 minutes. And get this, back in Pompeii, the massive bakeries actually used these giant mechanical mixing paddles driven by donkeys to do the heavy lifting. After that, you shape the loaf, tie a string tightly around its equator, press deep lines into it to make 8 distinct sections, and bake it at 400 degrees. Moving on to part 2. The Roman Pasta Code, Rules of the Eternal City. Okay, we need to bust a massive culinary myth right out of the gate. If you see heavy cream in a Roman cacio e pepe, run the other way. Seriously, true authentic cacio e pepe relies strictly on a holy trinity of just 3 ingredients: pecorino romano cheese, freshly crushed black pepper, and starchy pasta water. But here's the thing. The real secret to this dish isn't just the technique or the hands of the chef. It's an invisible ingredient, the water. Remember those Roman engineers? Rome had 11 major aqueducts, moving water up to 60 miles from mountain springs. And because that water filtered through porous limestone bedrock, it picked up massive amounts of dissolved calcium and magnesium carbonate. They built an empire-scale hard water delivery system by total geographic accident. In Rome, they call this starchy, mineral-rich pasta water a mid. When you aggressively toss this hard, starchy water with finely grated pecorino and pepper, a literal chemical emulsion happens. The fat and the starch bind together into this silky, luxurious sauce without a single drop of actual cream. That same precise chemistry applies to another Roman titan, the carbonara. But for carbonara, you absolutely have to understand guanciale. This is cured pork cheek, and it provides the rich, completely non-negotiable fat required to build the dish. When guanciale hits a hot pan, it releases what I can only describe as a sensory waterfall of fat. This rich, savory oil is exactly what separates a real Roman carbonara from those imitations made with bacon or pancetta. This chart brilliantly illustrates the unyielding balance of the dish. Look at those 5 strict slices: rigatoni, fresh eggs, pecorino, black pepper, and guanciale. That's it. No garlic, no peas, no cream. When it all comes together, it's so perfectly rich that you pretty much have to partake in the Roman tradition of scarpette. You know, grabbing a piece of crusty bread to enthusiastically scrape up every last drop of that sauce from the bottom of your plate. So that brings us to part 3, essential Roman street food, deep fried and stuffed. You know, you can't truly grasp Roman food just by sitting in fancy restaurants. You've got to get out into the bustling, chaotic spots, like the Testaccio market, for authentic, handheld bites. Let's compare 2 iconic snacks that people constantly mix up. On the left, you've got the Sicilian arancino. It's larger, usually filled with a meat ragu or maybe some peas. But on the right, that's the Roman supplì. It's a smaller, deep-fried rice ball, famous for its intense, stringy, telephone cord cheese pull when you break it in half. In Rome, you can even find incredible local variations of the supplì packed with those intense, creamy carbonara flavors we just talked about. Next up on the street food scene is a relatively modern revolution, the trapezzino. Invented just about a decade ago, this thing is essentially a genius stuffed pizza pocket. Biting into it delivers this ASMR-level, highly satisfying sensory crunch on the outside while the inside stays perfectly soft. It is, without a doubt, the ultimate edible vessel for holding traditional, melt-in-your-mouth Italian stews. Which leads us perfectly into exactly what they're stuffing inside those trapezinos. Take coda alla vaccinata, for example. This is a classic, deeply rustic Roman oxtail stew. The meat is slow-cooked in a rich, slightly acidic tomato and carrot base until it is just unbelievably tender. It's a perfect example of how history constantly informs modern street food, taking a centuries-old stew and totally repurposing it into a handheld 21st century crunchy pocket.
And finally, part 4, authentic slices and sweets, finishing the feast.
Okay, the number 60 is absolutely vital here. 60 seconds. That is exactly how long it takes to bake a perfect Neapolitan-style pizza in a blistering 800-degree oven at artisan spots like Piccola Buco. But let's bring it back to that limestone aqueduct water for a second. Bakers everywhere agree on something that chefs rarely say out loud. Water is an ingredient. That hard, calcium-heavy water we talked about? It's exactly what allows this artisan dough to flash bake in 60 seconds, springing up to form that gorgeous, airy, open crumb without burning. The water is doing the heavy lifting. Now, if you prefer your bread sliced, you have to check out the massive panini coming out of shops like All'Antico Veneo. Their most popular sandwich, La Favolosa, is literally stacked with sprigiolona salami, house-made pecorino cream, artichoke cream, and spicy eggplant. What's super unique about eating this in Rome compared to other Italian cities is that the local bread is surprisingly softer. It provides this beautiful, chewable contrast to all those punchy, crunchy ingredients packed inside. But hey, what about breakfast? Picture this. You're standing at a cool zinc counter in Rome, holding a hot espresso. Right next to it is the maritoso. This is the ultimate Roman breakfast pastry. It's a beautifully baked, remarkably fluffy sweet bun sliced right down the middle and absolutely overflowing with fresh whipped cream or a rich pistachio filling. And honestly, despite how incredibly decadent it looks, it is surprisingly light and airy. And of course, to finish off a Roman night, we have gelato. But not just any gelato. Artisan shops go all out with specialty flavors. Take the frigidarium flavor. It's this rich base packed full of crushed pan di stelle chocolate cookies. But here's the kicker. Right before they hand it to you, they dip the entire thing into a vat of dark chocolate that instantly hardens into this amazing cracking shell. It's just a brilliant, delicious highlight of the fun, sweet side of Rome's culinary artistry. So, here's what it all comes down to. Rome's food isn't just fuel. It's a living, breathing history book written in flour, hard water, cheese, and cured meats. From a carbonized loaf in ancient Pompeii to a 60-second pizza crust literally engineered by the ancient aqueducts. It really makes you think. The next time you travel, how will you seek out those true heritage foods and look beyond the obvious tourist traps to find the authentic cultural heartbeat of a city? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and of course, keep eating.